There's there's this great movie called Rogue One. It's a Star Wars movie, Star Wars spin-off movie, and spoiler alert of something in the first 3 minutes, but um, basically, the mom of the main character, they get like attacked by these Imperial troops, and she tells the daughter, "Trust in the Force." She says that, and then, like a minute later, she gets shot and killed. An ego looking at that would say, "Oh, your whole, trust, whatever thing didn't work for you, did it?" Because it's looking at the person and their death as a loss, right? Like as a complete loss. Like you lost, right? Like you failed in your imperative of survival, and that's how an ego would look at it, right? And a material way of looking at it. Well, she died. Her trust didn't take her very far. As a matter of fact, if she was less trusting, maybe she would have escaped, right? That's what the thinking would be. But at a deeper level, we're looking at that person for who she is in front of us, like her body and, her life that's within that body. But beyond that, we don't know where she is, where she's gone after this, after her body was killed, right? We don't know, like what we don't know what's indwelling within her, and what happens with it thereafter. And so, in that sense, we need a sense of trust. There's a fantastic scene in The Empire Strikes Back in which Luke is training with Yoda, and he's very egoistic and very arrogant and really wants to combat Vader and save the galaxy and stuff in this heroic way. And those things are good ambitions, but the problem is that the way he's going about it sort of guarantees his failure, because he's so oppositional and he's actually very scared, and as a result he needs to play himself up immensely in order to think he can do it. So long as that underlying fear is there, of course, if he didn't play himself up, he'd just do nothing, and he wouldn't have actually learned and grown. But what happens is that Yoda sets up a training exercise in which there's this cave, and Luke says, "There's something not right here. I feel cold. Death." Yoda says, "That place is strong with the dark side of the Force. A domain of evil it is. In you must go." Luke says, "What's in there?" Yoda says, "Only what you take with you." And Luke starts going, and he fastens his holster belt full of weapons, and Yoda says, "Your weapons, you'll not need them." Luke scoffs at him and goes inside. It's a neutral scene. There's just nothing. There's just an iguana, a snake, some empty cave. And very shortly thereafter, this scary music plays, and this shot gets a little blurry, right? This camera might shake a little bit, and you see Vader walking out in slow motion. Luke, of course, draws his lightsaber. Vader draws his. Vader attacks Luke, hits his saber once or twice, then Luke cuts Vader's head off. The body collapses. And Luke is looking at the helmet. The helmet explodes, or the mask explodes, and what's underneath it but Luke's face. And he's perplexed. He just thought he killed Vader. But if you remember, what Yoda said is, the only thing there is what you take with you. And he brought in this image of Vader, this enemy in his mind, and he took his weapons against Yoda's advice. You should have gone in with vulnerability, not with ego. And he achieved exactly what he went in there with. He beat the villain in a sense, but that villain wouldn't have existed to begin with if he didn't think there was a villain. All he saw was himself in that Vader mask. In a sense, he killed part of himself by doing that. Now in real life, similar thing happens. He gets drawn by Vader, and he goes in with the exact same mentality, very egoistic, and it's a fantastic, oh my god, 20-minute video breaking down this lightsaber battle. I'm gonna link it in the description. Luke goes in, and he's just so brash. He has to put on so much bravado because he's scared out of his mind and needs to pump himself up. Vader, meanwhile, is just chilling. He does not, he's barely even, he's not even trying. He's fighting Luke with one hand or two, whatever it is, just extremely relaxed, demonstrating all of his power through his non-reaction to anything Luke is doing. His complete nonchalance as Luke is fighting his heart out and Luke's getting his butt beat. He's able to manage a few blows, but he gets completely dismantled and then actually dismembered. Vader cuts his arm off. He reveals to him that he's his father. Then only in the next movie, where Luke goes in as a Jedi would and should, without the mask, without the ego. He goes in to resolve peace. He wants to make peace with Vader. He wants to make Vader come to the good side. He doesn't go in oppositionally. He trusts, though it must be very scary. So if he's facing Vader in one of two ways, he's facing Vader either way, right? One is the aggressive way, to kill him in the first one, in The Empire Strikes Back. Then he's facing Vader again the second way, which is operating from love. Now, Vader is a threat either way. Vader could kill him, Vader could abduct him, Vader could give him to the Emperor, whatever. He's facing the same person with the same set of risks. In one, he goes armed with a lightsaber, and in the other, he goes naked. He surrenders his lightsaber. And ultimately what ends up happening is that, long story short, the Emperor, once he sees that Luke is not going to convert to the dark side, begins to kill him by electrocuting him. And then Luke is on the floor begging, writhing, saying, "Father, please." And whereas Vader had no reason to break out, he looked, he saw his son on the floor, dying. He looked, he saw his boss killing his son. Then he saw how evil this was. He felt it. Rather than being lectured at or this or that, although those are precursors to this moment, he picked up the Emperor and threw him into an incinerator chute thing. And he got electrocuted in the process, and shortly thereafter he died. Before he dies, though, he says to Luke, "Son, help me take this mask off." And Luke says, "But you'll die." Nothing can stop that now. Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes. When the mask comes off, you see him for who he really is. And he's not this tough, macho, completely in control boss. Not at this moment. He's just a He's just a man, just a father with his son. He tells Luke that Luke was right about him, that there is good in him. And it took Luke seeing it and willing to sacrifice himself in order for that goodness to come out. Our purpose beyond, with respect to our interactions and interrelations, beyond what they are on the surface, beyond the physical manifestation of our interactions and engagements, insofar as we like to help somebody, our purpose is to help people take their masks off. And we do it first by taking off ours. When Luke went up to Vader oppositionally, Vader wasn't trying to kill Luke because he knew what he was doing, but Luke was literally trying to kill Vader. And then Luke's reward is getting his arm cut off, and then he escaped, but he almost died escaping. When he came with love, instead of Vader cutting Luke's arm off, Vader sacrificed himself to save Luke's life. Had Luke not done this, had Luke not taken this training seriously, he couldn't have overpowered Vader or the Emperor. He would have died, and everything would remain as it is. And the galaxy would still be in tyranny. He would have failed. Yet as a result of his love, by the end of the scene, both the Emperor and Vader were dead, and he was alive. It's funny. He actually killed Darth Vader with love. He killed the ego of Darth Vader, for sure, and the body that was inhabiting that ego also died, although that was not his purpose, but it did happen. But he died with nobility. Luke said, "I've got to save you." Vader said, "You already have." I was on a flight from Buenos Aires to New York, 2015. And I was talking to some stewardesses in the back, and I was telling them about this scene, and when I told her about help me take this mask off, Luke says, "But you'll die." The stewardess said, "That's symbolic right there." The mask is what we think, capital emphasis there, think we need for survival. And the more we think about it, the more entrenched it becomes. Vader said, "Nothing can stop that now. Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes." Vader only became Vader because he didn't trust. That's a whole nother story, but he was scared about his mom and his wife dying, and he went all sorts of crazy and evil. It wouldn't have happened if he were more trusting, and he weren't so attached to these people in a way that he had very deep love for them, but it was also very deep attachment at an egoic level, and he couldn't accept that they would pass. At some point they would pass for sure. So he tried to accumulate the most power he possibly could, and in an attempt to save them, but it didn't work. the same thing could have happened to Luke. It almost did. But Luke's surrender allowed Vader to surrender. And then rather than more dead people, more killing, there is instead one moment of love due to trust.